First-person games are scary. Third-person games are scary. Allow me to get those statements out of the way up front, but fixed-angle horror games. Horrifying, dread-inducing, tension-building, gut-wrenching, hairs on the back of your neck electrifying levels of horror. Where did all the fixed-angle horror games go? And please, can we bring some of them back? The immediacy of first-person and third-person games can't be denied. Resident Evil 7 alone is proof that first-person horror isn't going anywhere. Aside from, yeah, the enemies are heading straight towards your eyeline, but having a rotting head surface mere centimeters away from your head is the true horror of first-person games. Not just having things come towards you via the screen, but the closeness of discomfort cannot be underestimated. However, I think and will argue with the brick wall of my camera lens that dread plays a far bigger role in fixed-angle horror games than first-person ones. Cultivating dread is an art, and when it's done right, has more longevity than jump scares that first-person horror sometimes uses as a crutch. Fixed camera angles have you so stuck. You can move your character, but your viewpoint is immovable. It's the closest thing to the dream logic of nightmares, where you're watching yourself get closer and closer to harm, but can't actually back off, with more degrees of separation between you and your video game protagonist self, but the same string of horror keeping you tied together. Seeing something get closer to you and fleeing, then reorienting yourself in an entirely new fixed angle scene, induces a panic in me, and I hope in some of you watching this, that first-person games can never quite match. The temporary disorientation in moving a character around in a new space can't be matched unless the third-person/first-person game suddenly inverts its controls or something, especially when the camera switches to point at a different angle, like from below, looking up at the scene rather than from above. Realism is increasingly more the goal of AAA horror games in the year of our lords and ladies 2025. Not in terms of subject matter, but in how things look. Fine lines on Lady Dimitrescu's face, blood splatter in The Last of Us Part 2, and first person is assumed to go hand in hand with realism. Fixed camera angles are just as realistic though. Think about it. And I apologise if this messes up your perception of media from now on. Fixed camera angles are everywhere. Rarely do we realise just how prolific they are as we're the subject of these fixed camera angles. Security cameras in shops and on streets, our webcams in Google Meet, Twitch or Discord, Ring doorbells, watching YouTubers witter in their bedrooms or lounges. At last it's time for me to talk about the old Resident Evil games. I bet you were waiting for that. Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, Code Veronica, Resident Evil 0, all fixed camera angles. The old gods, if you will. They must be happy that worship is starting once again with the birth of new titles like Alisa and Flesh Made Fear, where a lot of the footage from this video is from. Controversial game Haunting Ground has been resurfacing on TikTok too, also using fixed camera angles to emphasize that you're being hunted, confined to a labyrinthine mansion where you're trapped by corridors, secret doors, and awkward split-level rooms that the camera can't quite reveal in their entirety. Limitations of gaming console hardware in the 90s meant that it took a lot of processing power to render detailed scenes where the player could control where the camera was placed. Fixed camera angles were a creative workaround that arose out of necessity. As consoles and PCs began to get more powerful, the need for fixed camera angles lessened and became a choice. A choice I wish AAA games made at least an option for horror games, honestly. Horror is all about the tension that feeling discomfort causes and the loss of control, and it's a perfect pairing with fixed camera angles. Your freedom to move and get space between yourself and a threat is almost eliminated. No matter how far away you move the player character, you, the player, the person, are still stuck. Not being able to see around corners or make out what that tiny thing in the distance is. Seeing something in the corner of the room that's only a handful of pixels big, and you can't move the camera closer for a better look. All of that uncertainty is part of effective horror. It's claustrophobic to be stuck in one perspective and not being able to turn around or step out of the corner. You have to look at what's in front of you and, short of closing your eyes, you can't turn away. Even death animations are given extra spice with fixed camera angles too. Usually, in first-person games, you have the fade to black after being killed, and before you meet your end, you can't really see the full impact of what's going on, like being swallowed by the Beneviento baby. Or, if in third person, the camera does some dynamic moves to the beat of your bones breaking. Dynamic cameras in fixed angle horror are a bit rarer. In Resident Evil 2, the angle of the camera changes to rotate when Claire or Leon die. But this movement doesn't exacerbate the death in any way, not nearly to the same extent as Dead by Daylight's Memento Mori, certainly. There's no fade to black, no camera work to emphasize the brutality of what's happening to your player character, just the cold, impartial view of death. You're in spectator mode with all its accompanying dread, forced to occupy simultaneously contradictory states, watching and being watched, able to move but trapped in place. I'm giving myself a bit of an existential crisis, just hang on a second. Third person and first person points of view in horror games are a given now, I think it's fair to say. We assume a horror game is going to be in third or first person, and that might be an assumption that happens behind the doors of most game development too. I don't know, and don't have any privy into that world, but there are games that are bringing fixed camera angles back. Flesh Made Fear and Alisa are just two titles of that ilk, and ones that I have the most familiarity with. At the time of making this video, I'm only able to play a demo of Flesh Made Fear, but Alisa came out in 2021, so you can play it in full right now. I love Alisa. It's scary, unsettling, and in places just weird. If you're hankering for a fixed camera horror game now you've heard me get borderline philosophical about them, then I can't recommend Alisa enough, although I definitely will try. Though, if this image of Alisa in a baby blue dress holding a doll's head and an AK-47 isn't enough to convince you, then clearly I'm going to be fighting an uphill battle. There is a lot more that can be done with fixed camera angles than just make horror, but it is the genre that I most associate with it. Thanks to indie developers and the low-demand technical requirements of games with fixed camera angles, the demake genre is blossoming with each passing day. Honourable mentions to Alisa, Flesh Made Fear, Signalis, 10 Dead Doves, and kind of Crow Country. It would be very wholesome if we could start a list in the comments about fixed angle horror games that I haven't recommended in this video, so please, if there are any that you think people should check out, let me know in the comments below. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, or just tolerated it, please do chuck it a like. And subscribe to Eurogamer for videos about video games almost every single day. Now, I am going to go and admire all of Alisa's dresses, so I'll see you folks next time.